So the more personal the work is, that was something my friend immediately pointed out because I come out of that call with a stylist and I call up my friend because I'm like so upset. She's like, oh my God, you're like more upset than normal because the personal styling service is you're vulnerable. It's not like you telling me, hey, I need a better email sequence where I can just be like F off. It's like you criticizing my style is like it feels like you're criticizing me. And so same thing with mental health or coaching, counseling, marriage, any of that, because most people have a hard time distinguishing between their identity of what's them versus like everything outside of that. But the closer and closer you get to that core identity piece, the more and more likely it's like lots of feelings are going to come up.
I wonder if this is why so many people in the healing space, so I'm talking hormone health, anything wellness, fitness, relationships, struggle the most with sales because a lot of the templates that have been made could work in a marketing situation where if I'm on a call with you and your email list building skills are bad, you will take feedback and a less profound connection between us, let's say, and still work with me based on my expertise. But if I'm here to tell you about the reasons why you're having indigestion and struggling to go to the bathroom is because you failed in XYZ way, then that's not going to land the same way.
Yeah, I think so. And depending on why they're having these digestive issues, right? It's very easy to point out certain things they're doing. And if you're not careful, it'll make them sound like you'll come off like you're saying it's their fault, which I think is a huge problem, right? Like you're blaming them for their choices. And so that was one of the other takeaways I gleaned from that train wreck of a call with the stylist is like, you know what? Like, don't make the person feel bad for the choices they've made because you should be grateful. It's those choices that puts this person in front of you right now. So, there's many ways to communicate this. Like, why would you choose that way? And I think with the healer space or like the wellness space or people who like to think of themselves as somehow like a elevated human being and like these sales tactics, like it really doesn't align and yet they're trying to do it, which then they come off icky, which doesn't align with their brand or who they want to be. And I see this with coaches all the time. And it's just very weird. I'm like, you have to figure out how to make the sales work for you. It's the same overall structure, I would say. I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts?
No, I think it is. Like I was gonna actually say, like to finish this episode, something I thought we could even do is break down the structure of how this call would have gone better for you to make you say the yes, to
Mm.
get her to work with her. Maybe she'll hear it.
There was a coach like a sales coach who asked me, did you give her feedback? I'm like, no, because she didn't ask for it. And I didn't feel like offering feedback because I could tell she was already so reactive. She was so triggered. It's like, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't have been open to it. Yeah, that would be hilarious if I sent her a link to this episode or if she heard it on her own and I get like an angry email. Are you talking about me? Blah, 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 blah.
Or maybe in an ideal world, she listens and she comes back and says, "Here's actually your plan that I can do for you."
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Let's say, obviously, it's probably not gonna happen with this person, but if we go through the structure of that call, so starting with because you were saying it's a similar structure, and I agree with you. I think the mechanics and the flow are a little different depending on the industry. But what would you say is the first intro part you would want to feel comfortable and like she's setting a foundation to connect with you?
I think because you talking about someone's style, it being so personal, for her to address the vulnerability component would have gone a long way to establish that trust. In this call, I may point out certain things about your style that may be hard to hear, but just please know I don't mean anything personal about it. Like I'm just sharing these things as like areas where we could help you look better or look the way that you want to. And if at any point you feel uncomfortable, please tell me and we can pause and maybe we can unpack some of what's coming up for you. You don't have to do the unpacking bit, right? But to give the person permission that it's okay that they are likely to feel uncomfortable, especially the way she runs a sales call, I think this is very likely to come up in this type of industry. It's like you're going to feel exposed. You're going to maybe feel some shame around some of this stuff. You may also feel overwhelmed, which is very normal. You'll start to see that your buying choices in the past have kind of led you here with an overflowing closet and yet feeling like you have nothing to wear. And this is completely normal. So there's nothing, to feel guilty about.
This is an amazing first part. So this is the pre-frame, going in pre-framing situation that and the emotions that might come up with someone. And you could say exactly this in anything. I could bring you in for a fitness sales call and say the exact same thing. The idea of I know stuff is going to come up. It's not your fault. Choices have led to this. Feel free to tell me if it's getting to be too difficult to go through. And then also what you were saying where giving a specific scenario that communicates she understands. So you have all of these clothes, but you're not wearing them, immediately establishes, I get where you're at. I understand.
And there was one part, the choices bit, right? Like, I get that you've made some choices in the past. It reminded me of this, I don't know, what do you call it? You know how when people have like those Tupperware parties, like for MLMs, right? For any MLM though, not like just Tupperware. I actually attended one a few weeks ago and it was for like a supplement powder type of thing. And this person, they had multiple speakers, but the person they say for the last, he was the closer. You know it because he was so good. And there was this one line he said that was just amazing. I was like, I'm writing down my notes. I'm like, he said, it's not where you come from that matters. It's the direction you're moving forward to. And I think that's the bit that we fail to really like highlight for our clients or our would-be clients. They are going to feel lots of guilt and shame around what they've done in the past. And to make them feel and understand that that's okay, and all that matters is where you choose the direction you're heading to. That's what really matters. So you give them like this hope bit, right? It's okay. It's okay. Just look forward and I got you. That's the feeling I think you really want to be conveying in any sales call.
This is almost kind of the next part after the pre-frame is it's not the transformation per se, but it's the possibility of it. It's okay, you might feel this, you've done this, but we can move you in a different direction. It's not too late. There's not any problem with it. It doesn't matter again where you started. Put those objections away because that's also a big objection is I can't because I have this history. What do you feel about getting into the part where we really talk about what you need?
I think actually I'm wondering like how you work with your clients on these bits, like what's different. So like after I share with you, I would love to hear your side of how you frame these conversations because here's the thing that I think people also don't fully understand is that even if you're always handling the same type of client, the conversation will alter because of who they are, right? So things may not come in the same order every time, or maybe some bits don't even make it on the table because that's not an issue for them. When I was trying to simplify it down, like as like very simple as possible for the role players, I was like, your only goal on this call is to figure out what they want. It's like, forget about you might have a solution. Remove the thought that you have something to sell because your only goal is to figure out what they want. And then the secondary goal is to figure out what is keeping them from getting there. Now, that second layer is really important because that's where your expertise can come in and shine. So it's very much like you going to the doctor. And this is one of the examples I had a lot of fun with on one of the webinars. So I want you to imagine like you're the doctor and someone comes into your office and they are like, "Doctor, I have a runny nose." I was like, "What's the next step you would take?" I had some people saying I would run a blood test and I was like, um, "That's a leap. You're gonna order a blood test when all the person said was I have a runny nose, can you help me?" And then other people were like, "Oh, maybe you have allergies." I'm like, "Well, that's also kind of a leap because you don't have enough information." So, really, your next step should be to just ask more questions. You need to figure out what the pain is. Oh my God. Can I show you like the whiteboard I created?
Show me the whiteboard. Let's see it.
It's like not super fancy, okay? So don't judge me. But this is the thing I created for that series to try and demonstrate this.
Okay. I think let's for people listening, explain the images.
Okay. So there's a stick figure person standing on top of like a little mountain or an iceberg, and they're in pain. Okay. So they're in pain and then they're screaming help. So they're standing on top of the iceberg, but the underneath of the iceberg is the problem. And so often what the person will tell you is the problem actually isn't the problem, as you know, right? Like in your health coaching or fitness. And so your job is to discern, right? So this is where I said your expertise will come in. So they're screaming help. Now there's a boat next to, like, nearby, like this iceberg. This is you. Like, you as the entrepreneur, as the service provider, you are the boat who can take that person away from that pain. But the main question here is, where are you taking them to? You don't know, and the problem is most of us assume you know where that person wants to go. So you have to really figure out, what do they want, because that's the goal. And it generally takes several rounds of questioning. I think it would be better if we used like a real example. So maybe with your fitness type of person or any of your clients.
I'll give a podcast one. So I have done one-to-one launching podcasts, right? So I've done that. And the reason why I want to use this example, because it's something where it's so specific. People have a really specific need and want they're coming in for. It's not like with wellness coaching where they might come to you and say, I want to feel better in my body, right? But they don't actually, they need to talk to you more about what the problems are to figure it out. This is kind of a straightforward thing, to your point about you can skip some steps. So they come in, they want to do it. And it would be very easy for me to say, okay, this is my expertise. This is the structure of how it works. But that doesn't get into the main problem here, which is, why do you even want to start this in the first place? Why I can't take that for granted, because maybe actually it doesn't make sense for you to start a show, or it doesn't make sense right now. Maybe there's some stuff you need to do first. Like that person on the iceberg, maybe they need to heal a wound. They can't walk before they go to sea. Right? Like you need to know these things. So I would always be starting with that, of understanding what is the motivation for creating this, and also what are some of the solutions that have been used in the past for that problem or for the reason why you're doing it, which is usually they're not reaching enough people. Is all almost always the case. But I still ask because you can never take that for granted.
Has there been at least a handful of instances of someone saying, other than I want to reach more people for a business purpose?
Yes. So sometimes I've heard people, they just want to share their knowledge, which kind of dials down to the same thing. You want to share your knowledge, but you want to share on a grander scale, because probably if you're in business already, you're already sharing it with at least one person. So it's the same thing, but it's like different words.
Okay, that's really interesting, because I'm like putting myself into the shoe, like, or the shoes of your potential person. And I'm like, if you ever have like a next level program version of this, it's like, I know I would sign up, because I've been struggling with getting my own podcast off the ground, and I've had podcast producers not work out for me. So this is a little embarrassing. Anyway, I'm one of those people where the business benefit is a secondary benefit. Like, if you were to ask me, why do I want this? It's really for my own self-expression, because
Mm.
I see myself as somebody who wants to become really well known, and that, of course, will bring me those speaking opportunities, or it will help me bring or build a strong brand, and I will get more customers. But my primary goal is, I want to be famous, I want to be known, and I want to spread my message and have more impact on people.
I love that, because see, that's even something that I would never know if you were on this call if I hadn't asked the deeper questions, right? If I just immediately went in and said, you want to do this because you want to grow your audience, is not getting to the fundamental reasons of why you're doing this. Because when I know this, I can go into, okay, what have you tried before to establish yourself as this thought leader? What have you done before? Why did it not align? Why didn't it work? And then I can go into more of what's involved. But I feel like it's so easy for us to jump past that and go straight into the prescription. Okay, let's do it. Let's launch this. But then that means, especially on one to one, that I would not be creating the right program for you. It wouldn't actually touch on what you value, which is being known, boosting your brand. That's different than maybe what I would have envisioned.
And you're reminding me, so I have like 2 things, 2 images coming up in my mind. Maybe this is like an ADHD type of thing. Sometimes, I don't know if you ever experience this, you ever feel like there's so many ideas coming out one at the same time? And it's like kids fighting over a slide over who gets to come, and then nobody comes, it gets stuck, like nobody comes down the slide. So I had this image when you said jumping to a prescription. You know how people will go on beaches with like the metal detector? Like the beep, beep, the looking for something, right? And I find that what most people are doing in these conversations is like the equivalent of like, is it here? And you just start digging a hole. How about here? And you just start digging a hole. I'm like, why on earth would you do that? It's like, get your metal detector out and maybe see that you get in the right neighborhood and actually the right spot before you start digging the hole. And where a lot of these people, so just like a clock, like a broken clock is right twice a day, sometimes they strike gold. And they're like, "Oh, this worked." I'm like, "No, you got lucky." You have to understand the difference.